Now, I normally don't make videos this late of an hour. It's after midnight, but an article was just released in Newsday that I want to read to you. It's kind of important because it has to do with we were talking about the deer situation in Suffolk County a couple of days ago, and another article was just put in Newsday. And while that hunt, or should I say culling, at William Floyd Estate is on hold, there were other cullings of deer in other state parks that are just, ridiculous. All right, I'll give you my thoughts after I read this article to you. But anyway, it says nearly 4 dozen white-tailed deer were shot and killed at 5 Long Island state parks by U.S. Agriculture Department hunters because officials say overly large herds are damaging the landscape. 4 federal employees killed the most deer, 21 deer, at Robert Moses State Park in Babylon. Agriculture Department spokesman Tanya Espinoza said by email on Friday, "We conducted work at the Robert Moses State Park last night, which was the only night we conducted removal operations," she said. Unlike members of the public, the federal hunters who cull herds can lure deer with bait such as apples and use flashlights to blind them. These hunters can also use thermal imaging to ensure other animals are not targeted by mistake. The deer they kill are given to food banks. Another deer hunt, which had been set to start last Wednesday at the William Floyd Estate in Mastic Beach, remains suspended until a judge decides whether to grant an injunction to animal welfare groups that sued, arguing the hunts are ineffective and non-lethal options should be used instead. Critics also say parks officials have failed to keep up with the latest methods for limiting herds. In January, for example, researchers in the head of the harbor village began testing facial recognition software, drone-mounted infrared cameras, and DART-delivered contraceptives to track, count, and contain the deer population. Deer culling is an unfortunate but necessary approach to restore the health of native plants, reduce the number of vehicle-related deaths and injuries to deer, and protect visitors, said Dan Keefe, a state parks department spokesman. At East Islip's Heckscher State Park, 17 deer were culled. 5 were killed at Comsett State Historic Park in Lloyd Harbor, and 2 at Sunken Meadow State Park in Kings Park, and 1 at Planting Fields Arboretum State Historic Park in Oyster Bay. Agriculture Department hunters will be deployed by the Fire Island National Seashore over the next 2 years if the judge allows them to kill more than 100 of the 132 deer at William Floyd Estate. The estate, which bears the name of the signer of the Declaration of Independence, is just under 1 square mile. A state parks officials say can only support 20 to 25 deer. Starting next year, officials plan another 2-year hunt in Fire Island's wilderness area. That area is just over 1.7 square miles, and about 91 deer lived in there in 2018, park officials estimated. About 65 would be killed if the size of the herd is the same. Robert Moses is about 1.4 square miles. It had about 70 deer per square mile, the Parks Department said, far more than it could sustain. No more hunts are planned for this year, the department said, though the lack of natural predators allows the herd to keep growing. The hunts have proved deeply unpopular. Public comments the seashore received overwhelmingly opposed them. Fire Islanders say the deer are quite tame, accustomed to being hand-fed treats, including bagels. In November, the Washington, D.C. Animal Welfare Institute and the Whippany, New Jersey-based Wildlife Preserve Incorporated sued the seashore, arguing the hunts planned for the William Floyd Estate and on Fire Island breach deed restrictions governing the land Wildlife Preserve donated to the parks decades ago. The hunts also violated the National Environmental Policy Act. The presiding judge, U.S. District Court Judge Sandra J. Feuerstein, last year rejected another lawsuit that sought to block the hunts by arguing the same environmental law barred them. The Agriculture Department objects to the terms hunting and culling. Wildlife service professionals are not hunters, Espinoza said. It is not a sport or a hunt, but a rather well-researched method to reduce damage in the most efficient and effective manner possible. All right, so I'm going to share with you some of my just thoughts on this. Yeah, deer overpopulation is a problem, but the way they're going about this is, I do not feel it is fair. I do not feel it is completely humane. I do not understand why, for instance, the William Floyd estate in Mastic Beach couldn't be considered part of the January deer hunting season here on Long Island, because when the deer are culled, they can bait them and they can use flashlights to blind them, which I think is absolutely cruel. All right, I'm sorry, that's not fair. That's not a fair hunt. This is absolutely, and of course they're not doing this in New Jersey. Of course, they're not doing this in New Jersey. New Jersey, they did have a bear hunt, but Phil Murphy actually got rid of the bear hunt. But here in New York, our governor doesn't really care about the environment. Unlike, the governor of New Jersey cares about the environment. Cuomo doesn't. He hates the environment. He hates the environment. This is why he's doing this. I do not think, they say, oh, it's damaging the trees and the plants. What about all the trash in Deer Park? How come the DEC doesn't care about that? What about the fact that we don't have controlled burns on Long Island, and we have the southern pine beetles now continuing to be a huge problem here because the forest is not healthy because there's not a correct fire balance. Whereas in New Jersey, they maintain that fire balance, and despite the fact that it's much warmer there, the pine's doing much better. Again, I'm not buying it. I think this is just another way of just trying to get rid of something to please a certain group of people that are upset that the deer are chewing their gardens up, and really has more to do with that than it has to do with the actual environment. Yeah, we have too many deer. It's a problem, but the problem is not created by the deer. It is created by us humans for knocking down so many of the habitats that the deer live in, so the habitats that remain are overcrowded, right? That's our fault. Maybe we should be culling some of the development and knocking down some of the developments and restoring those natural habitats. How about that? But that wouldn't happen, of course, would it? No, it wouldn't. So I'm not buying it. It's just another example of how things are so screwed up in this state and on Long Island in general, and just another example of why I think we need a different kind of approach here to our environments here on Long Island. The deer are not the problem. The problem is we're not preserving land. The money spent on these hunts could have gone to land preservation, preserving habitat. The money could have gone to controlled burns, so pitch pines, for instance, can continue to sustain themselves on Long Island, because at the rate we're going, these fires don't happen. The pitch pines will be wiped out either by the beetles or they'll be shaded out by the oaks, and we won't have a pine barrens anymore, and we'll have to go to New Jersey. So this is the deer. It's not the deer's fault, is what I'm trying to say here. And I think that if they do want to, I think that these lands should be open to maybe some hunting. But to not call what they're doing hunting and call it culling is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's terrible, and I think that I don't think this should be happening. And I think that these deer cullings in the parks are absolutely ridiculous. The park is a park. It's not supposed to be killing animals in a park. I think that's absolutely preposterous. It wouldn't be tolerated in New Jersey, but of course it's tolerated here because. That's the way it is here in New York and on Long Island. They don't really care about the environment. They just try to, basically try to fool you into thinking that they're doing this for the environment. They're not doing this for the environment. If they really cared about the environment, they would stop these developments. They would do some more prescribed fires, which we so badly need in the Pine Barrens, instead of spending their resources, time, and money on killing deer. It's not the deer's fault. It's our fault. It's humans that have messed up the environment on Long Island, not deer. That's what I have to say. Take care.